Oh, there's a lot to go over within this set. You could say it's a rather large one. Have to go in pairs, maybe team up even. Hey guys, this is Gamer Cow. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. Yep, team up is the set we're in. We are finally at the official introduction of tag teams. We did have Magikarp and Wailord as a preview card before. That is, gets its full art in the set. We also start seeing some, I wouldn't say character rares, but like higher rarity stuff for the tag teams specifically. Not all of these are released in actual sets, some of them are promo cards at the time, but we'll probably see the majority of them as we go through because, I mean, they're gorgeous and we do like our pretty cards. So yeah, I know Sai played this one in his Nightquack deck in the Lost Thunder stuff, so yeah, we didn't actually get to see that video though because that was a testing session. Anywho, not the point. What are the tag teams? Because a lot of people hate these things, and it's why Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder without Magikarp and Wailord is actually one of the favorite retro formats. Because people say these things ruin the game, and well, they're half right. Tag team Pokemon are gigantic basics that give up free prize cards. That is the long and short of it. They do tend to have very powerful, albeit usually very expensive attacks as well, but the point is they give up like half the prizes. They are basic Pokemon you can just play down straight away, and just on principle, a lot of people really hate that. I personally think that most of the tag teams are fine, with one key exception at the very end of the mechanic that we will have to wait a few sets to get to, because yeah, absolutely gross, that card in particular. It's ADP in case you've never heard of Pokemon stuff, but we will get into that later on. The actual other part that tag teams have to them is a special characteristic to their GX attacks. They have a base effect if you have the required energy to pay for them, but if you have extra energy specified within the actual text itself, then you get a bonus effect as well. This is, in Gengar Mimikyu's case over here, a blanket standard effect for 1 energy that the opponent can't play cards out of hand next turn, but if you put an extra 1 energy on it, then you draw until you have 7 cards in hand, and the opponent does too, which, yeah, sounds like a bad thing, but we'll get into that when we actually speak about the card itself. These energy costs can range from like that, where it's just 1 energy or 2 energy to do the thing, all the way up to something like 1 or 8 total energy. There is one at the very end of the format that needs 16 energy cards on it, I believe, in order to actually do its bonus effect, which is very silly. Literally never happens, but it's funny nonetheless. There's a lot to go over, so we won't really delay too much in here. There's a ton of very impactful cards in this set, and even though we're only spending one session on this set in particular, it's because the next one is going to be absolutely cracked as well, and there are a lot more decks out of there that I am personally interested in. I think I highlighted about 8 that I really want to play in there, and also Christmas break is going to happen, so we are going to spend a little bit of time away from the game as well. As far as promos go, Detective Pikachu released during this time. I haven't seen this be legal as far as PTCG Legend stuff goes, but it released in this time period within this set, so it should be available. It's kind of weird to see otherwise. But most of the Detective Pikachu cards really don't do anything. Yeah, in case you've forgotten, because, I mean, yeah, I guess it's easy to do so. This was the live action movie that came out. And yeah, these are the actual designs that they used in the movie. Apparently, I actually never saw it, I'll be honest with you. Wasn't really that interested, but hey. The notable cards out of this particular bit, as if you want to call them notable, there's a Charmander that has 60 HP, so if you play Elm's Lecture in the Charizard deck we'll talk about today, this is the one that you would want to use. There is a 50 HP one, but you want to use 60 if you can. And there's a Ditto that is like always on the cusp of being usable. Potentially in Sword and Shield base you could use this when we have another Rainbow style energy. This lets you steal one of the opponent's attacks so long as you can pay for it. So there's possibilities here, but there's a 60 HP basic that's weak to Sledgehammer. You're probably not seeing it. As far as the other promo stuff goes, Detective Pikachu did have some extra promo cards here as well. There's a Charizard that does like 250 on its GX attack and discards the energy from all of the opponent's Pokemon. You may see this used in Mewtwo and Mew later on, but there's a different Charizard that's GX attack is used more frequently. We do get the Nuzzle Pikachu. This released on the day that Team Up came out, so unfortunately we couldn't use it to play Raichu last round. If we could, I would have done Snuggly Generator stuff last time round, because we actually had the rest of the pieces, basically, and it would have been a good time to play it. But now, Lightning has better things to do. So yeah, wait until Cosmic Eclipse, and then we don't even use this one, because there's a 70 HP Pikachu. Rip this. The other one I want to note is Greninja. This card actually is useful in future formats, because we do kind of like its Mist Slash over here. Elusive Master is also pretty good. You don't play the Froakies and stuff to get this into play, because if it's the last card in your hand, you can bench it and draw 3 cards. We actually see this effect come back a couple of times on like single prizes. I believe there's a Metagross and more recently an Empoleon that does this, but they have really bad attacks. This one for Water in the Colors does 130 and is not affected by weakness, resistance, or anything. It's a Swift style attack. The fact that it's not resisted by Safeguard type effects is why we play this card. Otherwise, it's not too special, but you do need that effect later. There's a Necrozma that I thought was almost cool. It takes 2 Metal as well as 2 Psychic is the problem here, because if you get the bonus effect to do the actual amount of damage you want, then you have to discard 2 Metal, and there's not really any good way of getting 2 Metals back on immediately. Basically, if both players have 6 or fewer prizes remaining, you discard every energy that's on the thing, do 200 damage. That would have been really good for Malamar if it wasn't for the double Metal in its cost. Speaking on Metal, Meltan and Melmetal GX over here actually are kind of cool. The 60 HP Meltan means you could Elm Search it if you really wanted to, which is good because you've got to play this with Magnezone, and Magnezone does want to play that anyway. I guess you could get more Meltans as well. Melmetal is kind of neat because it's a 220 HP guy that takes 30 less damage from attacks. As a stage 1, that's pretty solid to be honest. 250 is awkward to hit. And its attack is very expensive, but sustainable. Metal Blast does 20 more for each metal that's attached to this guy. The catch is that unlike most of the Blaze Ball style attacks, or Secret Sword if you want to go by the Keldeo route, the problem is it's a base cost of 4 energy instead of 3, so even though that is hitting 190 damage for 4 and not discarding its energy like Dustmane would do, it's very expensive to maintain that. However, this card is useful in Metal style Mewtwo and Mew decks that we will see later. I do actually have one of this in that deck. So we will eventually see the attack, just not the Pokemon itself. If that makes sense. Let's talk about the trainers first, because there are a lot of good trainers to go through here, and some rather mimetic ones as well. Bill's Analysis is a really good trainer that never got a full art for some reason. You look at the top 7 cards of your deck and reveal up to 2 trainer cards you find out to put into the hand. This does not specify items, so you can get stadiums, you can get other supporters, stuff like that. It's a pretty good card, like Pokegear on a sort of dig tool, I guess is like the better, like a digging for any trainers is kind of cool. You're probably going to want to try and get items that you can use that turn, but I mean stadium cards are often something you need as well, and if your hand is down bad you could potentially get a supporter for the next turn. Pretty good. Black Market Prism, we do get a couple more type-based Prism Stadiums in this set. Not every type gets a Prism Star Stadium, which I always thought was weird, seemed like an unfinished mechanic. Oh well. If a Dark Pokemon that has a Dark Energy attached to it gets KO'd by damage from the opponent, the one who KO'd it takes 1 fewer prize cards. It also has the Prism Star Stadium protection thing, so that it cannot get discarded by an item or a supporter effect. So, no Field Blower on this thing, no Farber once Field Blower rotates. That's the general idea. This card is cool. It's not usually something that is going to come up, because it is often going to get bounced before it actually matters, but if you use this on a single prize Dark Pokemon, then you are giving up 0 prizes when they go down, which is absolutely amazing for the Umbreon that we will talk about, actually we talked about before, because it was in Lost Thunder. The Retaliate Umbreon even is really good with this card. Brock's Grip makes a comeback. I did mention this before. This will be the only major source of recovery into the deck once we rotate. So yeah, it's going to get played later on for sure. Buff Padding is the PogChamp card, as we would say. A very weird card to see here. If you have a retreat cost of exactly 4, you gain 50 HP. Which is curious, to say the least. There's a few good targets for this, of course, and we will just get more of them as we go. There is kind of a theme with the retreat cost of 4 exactly that we are going to see in this block of sets here, where, yeah, there's actually a searcher for stuff that way, as well as a whole archetype that revolves around discarding Pokemon of that cost. Very silly. We're going to talk about the Hat Lady stuff as a group at the very end of the trainer stuff here, because they are kind of important to discuss together, but we have a lot of other trainers to get through first, like Dangerous Drill. If you're playing a Dark Box sort of deck, which does actually become a thing as we move through this era, then yeah, it's kind of neat. Discard a Dark Pokemon and you get to discard a tool or a special energy from one of the opponent's Pokemon, or you get to discard Stadium in play. Very similar to Lost Vacuum nowadays, actually, except it is restricted to Dark Pokemon, so you have to be playing that kind of deck. Pretty neat, though. An item-based way of discarding a tool, or, you know, like, it's Stadium isn't sort of important. This is, like, less of a field blower at the moment, but it also has the ability to be Enhanced Hammer, if it needs to be. Both of those cards, however, will be rotating, so your alternative option is a supporter card. So this might actually see some play later. Electro Charger is something I really wish we had last round, along with one of the GXs that we'll see later as well. Flip 2 coins for each head, shuffle an Electro Power from the discard back into the deck. I did build a Jolteon-centric deck that was very cool, but unfortunately ran out of steam rather quickly, and this would have been a way of recovering said steam. Would have been nice. Erica's Hospitality is a slightly weaker version of Steven's Advice from Generation 3, where that one required you to have less than 7 cards in your hand. This one requires you to have 5, including this card. So if you have 4 or fewer other cards in your hand, you can play this and then draw a card for each of the opponent's Pokemon in play. It's a blanket draw up to 6, which is pretty ridiculous, to be honest. However, you don't want to rely on solely this, partly because you'll brick your hand if you do, but also because the opponent just might not bench a lot of stuff. There are some decks, most notably some tag team ones, that do not require you to bench a ton of Pokemon, and so you might end up just not actually going against someone who's benching a ton of stuff. So yeah. Fairy Charms also get an update in here as well. We now have an Ultra Beast one, so this prevents your Fairy Pokemon from taking damage from opponent's Ultra Beast GX. Ultra Beast DXs obviously don't exist, but they have to have the full text on there just to keep it up. Silvally gets Grass and Water memories in here. The Water one in particular is going to be important next set, although annoyingly, because you need to attach this, it means you can't put a Choice Band down on the thing as well, so it actually can't one-shot tag teams because they have too much HP. So that's a little bit of a shame. I will just say Silvally with a fighting memory will one-shot Pikachu and Zekrom, which is the biggest card in this set, so that's still useful. Ingo and Emmett, kind of a neat card. You look at the top card of your own deck and then discard your hand. You then get to draw 5 cards from either the top or the bottom of your deck. So if you see the card on top of the deck and you need it to stay there, then you can draw from the bottom of the deck, and that is kind of neat. There is technically a little bit of a combo you can do with this with Underground Expedition, or I think it's Expedition, it's either that or Exploration, one of the two. Where you're like bottom decking cards that you've seen from the top of the deck. It's a neat combo, but it's too slow really, unfortunately. If we had Claydol in the format, this would be kind of cool. I still think it's fine though. Jasmine's a card that I did build a deck for, but we didn't play in the end because we just did the one session for this particular set. You search your deck for a metal Pokemon, reveal it, put it into the hand. It's kind of lame. We had Trevor in Gen 6 that saw 0 play whatsoever, which was search for any Pokemon, so yeah, this doesn't seem like it'd be useful. However, if you are going second and it's your first turn, you get 5 metal Pokemon instead of the 1. This immediately catapults you into like full setup territory, and there is an archetype in this set which is metal exclusive that I thought was really cool. So yeah, alongside the fact of Jirachi is in this set, and this is a setup machine that a ton of decks are going to play. Yeah, it's kind of neat. Judge Whistle is a very interesting card. At the time of recording, actually, we've literally only just had the Yu-Gi-Oh! Ban list where Upstart Goblin has gone back to free, and this card is effectively Upstart Goblin with a second mode to it. You either get to draw a card, or you put a Judge from your discard pile into your hand. So that's neat. It means that if you play Judge for the Disruption now, you can actually play a 4-of that can let you get it back, so that you can actually have supporter access. But if you don't need that bit, it's just a straight 56 card deck now. It's pretty good. Lavender Town was used by some control decks. This lets the turn player look at the opponent's hand once per turn, so you can actually see if they've like bricked up or anything and go from there. Pretty good. Metal Goggles is good for this set and this set only. The Metal Pokemon this is attached to takes 30 less from the opponent's attacks, just like Metal Frying Pan. But instead of preventing weakness, which is much more important next set, you don't take any damage counters from opponents' attacks and abilities. Essentially, this means that we can't use Giratina on the Pokemon that this is on, or if for some reason you're still going up against Decidueye, I mean Decidueye did see play in the last set, so it could be there, that means you can't get Feather Arrowed. That's essentially it. Nanu is an interesting take on the Ninja Boy / like Swoop Teleporter sort of thing here. You choose a basic Dart Pokemon in your discard pile and swap it with any one of your Pokemon in play. It maintains all of the like turns in play, all of that kind of stuff, so you can evolve that Pokemon straight away if it is an evolving card, like a Murkrow or something. This is kind of neat because it lets you take an evolution card and put it into the discard if you really want to, but most Pokemon that we have at the moment don't really have like on evolution powers, so I don't really know how good it actually is, but there's a couple of neat things for it. Pokemon Communication makes its return from Generation 4. This is going to be our main ball search, if you will, once the rotation hits, because we lose Ultra Ball. So yeah, it's okay at the moment, but it's going to be much, much better later. Return Label and Sabrina's Suggestion are honestly pretty bad. Sabrina's Suggestion is supposed to work with Lavender Town, even though she is from Saffron City, but whatever. Like, your opponent reveals the hand and you get a supporter card from there as the effect of this card. Why not just play more of the actual supporters yourself? Whatever. Viridian Forest is kind of insane, if I'm being real. Once during each player's turn, that player can discard a card from the hand, and if they do, they get a basic energy from their deck. So this is fantastic for Grand Ball, also very, very good for Malamar variants, because you can search your metal energy for Ultra Necrozma. Every deck basically wants an effect like this. It's just, can you afford to give it to the opponent? That's the catch with Viridian Forest. Very, very strong card, but it's a bit of an arms race type one as well, because it is that good. Finally, Wondrous Labyrinth is the other Prism Star Stadium we have in here. This makes non-fairy Pokemon in play pay 1 more to attack. Ouch, that is gross. Yeah, so obviously Granbull is the first thing that came to mind with this. Is like, well, Granbull still attacks for 1 energy, but the opponent now has to pay more. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I have seen Pikarom decks with this, because Pikarom accelerates so much energy, they don't really care if they have to pay 4 for their full blitz. They'll do it anyway, because that's just the way they are. Finally then, for the trainers, we do need to talk about the Hat Ladies as a group, so let's just pick them all out here, because they do kind of go together as a pair. These are the Battle Chantelets from the Generation 6 Battle Maison. and I definitely know them relatively well because of my 200 win streak on that. They all were in charge of a different battle format in there, so you only ever saw the one during playthrough. They are supposed to be played as a group because they do different effects based on whether you are up against a basic Pokemon in the opponent's active, a stage 1, or a stage 2. Morgan requires you to discard all four of them as one effect, and that's what you actually want to do. Because their basic effects here are not particularly good. Nita lets you put an energy from the opponent's active on top of their deck if their active is a basic. That's like passable and is the one you're going to see the most often because that's what format we're in at this point. Evolution cards are quite a lot harder to play after all. So yeah, it's fine. It puts them back a turn potentially, but it's still not that impressive. Evelyn lets you draw 4 cards if the opponent is a stage 1. Very strong effect, but again, gotta go up against the stage 1, so that's unlikely. And Dana lets you search 2 cards out of your deck, but only if the opponent's active is a stage 2, which is almost never going to happen at this point. There are very, very, very few stage 2 decks that can actually still play. So we're not really using them for that. What we are using them for is with Morgan. If you discard all 3 of the other ladies and then you get to play this supporter, you look at the top 12 cards of your deck and take any number of energy that you find there and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. This is a super charged version of the Togekiss that I played all the way back in Generation 4 with the Ho-Oh. Yeah, this is a meme pretty much, but it is a very funny meme nonetheless, and we will see it because I do have decks in Unified Minds format for these. There's not really a lot that we want to do with them right now. Like, there are some cards which are very expensive to charge that we could play, but it's not worth it, and honestly, they are just very, very difficult to actually play in the first place. We will get cards later that can search for supporters. That makes this a much easier prospect, but right now, nowhere near enough support for them. The best we have is like Steven's Resolve, and that card is not seeing play for these, let's just put it that way. On to the Pokemon themselves. There are quite a lot that need to be spoken about here, so we'll get cracking. Celebi and Venusaur is the first of our tag teams over here. This is a 270 HP Pokemon. Does have that 4 retreat, so you could buff padding with this if you wanted to. It has 2 very annoying attacks and 1 very standard one. The standard one is Solar Beam, right? 2 grass and 2 colors to do 150. Pollen Hazard for 1 grass and 2 colors does only 50 damage, but it burns, confuses, and poisons automatically. So realistically that's 80 damage, and then confusion is on top of that, which is pretty annoying. Evergreen GX is the same cost as Solar Beam to do 180 damage, so just on the damage principle, sometimes you're going to need to use that. It fully heals this Pokemon, so that should tell you a bit about how this archetype plays. And if you have at least 1 extra grass energy attached to it, it Lysander's trump cards your own discard. Shuffle all cards from your discard back into the deck. Kind of ridiculous, to be honest. So the way this deck plays is a turbo draw for your deck with like all the aggro bikes, all of the Judge Whistle stuff as well. We get a ton of healing with even Potion ends up seeing play in this deck. There's a Shaman that lets you heal 20 from one of your grass Pokemon as a 1 prizer, so we have a ton of healing to go on. Mixed Herbs even gets played in this deck. And yeah, it's just like heal as much as you can, do damage when you eventually get there, and Evergreen lets you get all the stuff back into deck eventually so that you can do it all again. Very silly. There's a Beedrill over here that gets pretty good when the tag teams are more prominent. Destiny Stinger lets you KO both active Pokemon, but only if this has damage counters on it. So the way you do that, of course, is Rainbow Energy. There's also potentially Damage Mover, which can let you shift stuff around as well from your Pokemon to this thing. And Potown technically works as well, but that is rotating soon, so yeah. There's a Parasect that if you have a confused Pokemon, then or your opponent has a confused Pokemon, then they take damage counters. It's not really worth it. The Shaman Prism is actually really good. This is good for the Vikavolt Rayquaza deck. That's effectively just has the same attack as the Rayquaza. For 2 grass energy, the single prizer does 30 for each basic energy that you have in play. So Ray specifically needs grass and lightning, but this is grass and, you know, as a pure, so it's really the only deck that you're going to see it in. But it is pretty strong. As a single prize option, this gives you, like, you know, 240 plus damage on that. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, good card. Charmander, as I mentioned, there's a 50 HP one that has a good attack actually, but this means you need to use Memory Energy or Shining Celebi, so it's not really that useful. 20 damage for each damage counter that's on this for a DCE, pretty good. The actual Charizard that it would pair with is the one from this set, where its Roaring Resolve puts 2 damage counters on the Charizard, but if you do that, searches your deck for up to 2 fires and puts them onto this Pokemon. Its attack for 2 fire then does 30 for and plus 50 for each fire energy that you discard. You do have to discard all of them. This is very similar to some of the old attacks actually that like Dark Charizard had. We have this card in Standard, I believe, at the moment as a Lucario that is literally the same thing, just as a stage 1 with slightly less HP, if I remember rightly. 150 on the Lucario would be a bit too big after all. Card is really strong. We didn't get to see this deck in the team-up format, but we might get to see it in Unbroken Bonds because Sai still likes it and still will want to play it. So yeah, we're probably going to get to see it later. And it was part of the best theme deck in that mode on PTCGO alongside the Nidoqueen, because the Nidoqueen lets you search out Pokemon that isn't a GX or an EX once per turn. It also does more damage based on the evolution Pokemon that are on the bench. So yeah, just a quick side note on this one, the attack cost is triple colorless, and we do have a special energy, which I did not mention because it is not in this set. Triple acceleration energy in Unbroken Bonds actually makes this a payable attack as well, which is really good. So yeah, this was unarguably the best, most consistent theme deck that we had access to, so if you were playing that mode to farm some points and stuff to get packs, etc., it was really good. Also came with the Rapidash over here, which is terrible in Standard, but agility was extremely annoying and cost efficient in theme deck modes, so sometimes you won just because of that. There's Ninetales over here that's going to see play in Ability Zard post-rotation because we lose a lot of gusting options. If you discard 2 fire energy from your hand, you get to gust the opponent. So yeah, that makes Ability Zard one of the only decks that actually gets to have a Gust of Wind style effect. So yeah, going to see a lot of play in the future. Moltres over here is a sort of reprint of the base set, Fossil Moltres even, where you discard all the fire energy that's on it and then discard a card from the top of the opponent's deck for each energy that you discarded this way. So when we get to accelerate a bit more fire energy, technically this is more manageable, but we don't have Inferno Fandango in the format, so it's not really that good. Fire Spin's strong, just too expensive. 180 damage for free fire and a colorless, discard free energy from this Pokemon. Cool attack, we don't really have the ways of paying for it. There is, the Torracat artwork is kind of nice, so I guess we'll mention that real quick. There's a Squirtle in this set, which I'm very excited for in Unbroken Bonds. This 50 HP guy is not normally what you would expect to play when there's a 70 HP one right next to it, but if you have a Stadium in play, this has no retreat cost. We have Brooklet Hill in format until rotation, so we can easily make this happen, and there's a lot of good stuff in water that we can retreat to, so super good. It wouldn't matter if the Blastoise was bad though, but thankfully both Blastoise cards, we'll get the next one in Unbroken Bonds, is actually, they're both really good and they work well together. Powerful Squall lets you look at the top 6 cards of your own deck, attach water energy that you find there to your Pokemon in any way that you like. This was the other theme deck in this session actually, which was also really strong, so wasn't quite as good, but it could definitely compete. Hydro Tackle for free water energy does 150 damage, which is one-shot numbers in a lot of situations for theme deck mode, and you do 30 to yourself. So it's not sustainable, but man, the amount of energy acceleration you get off of this is really good. The Blastoise GX we'll talk about next time puts energy back into the deck to do theoretically unlimited damage, so they go back to the deck, you accelerate them back in with this card, and you just keep chaining super strong attacks. Just gotta get a lot of stage 2s in play, but it's water, that is possible. There's a Gyarados over here that's actually kind of neat and a similar sort of thing. Just, you don't play this with Blastoise, but it does a similar sort of look at, get energy out of the deck type stuff. 1 water energy to do 30 plus 30 more for each water energy you reveal in your top 7 cards of the deck. Any non-energy cards get discarded, but with Energy Recycler and a Turbo deck to get down to the bottom of it, you could realistically hit 210, 240 even with this, virtually every time. It is pretty cool. Just, yeah, a bit awkward. I've seen this Lapras in stall decks. I have no idea why. It's garbage. Like, its attack is 10 plus 30 for each water energy that's on this thing. The stall deck in question played a single counter energy, so it would do 70 at most. Even with weakness that's like two-shotting Reshizard. I have no idea why this got played, to be honest with you. So, I'm just noting it because it's there. What did see some play though, at least in the Blastoise deck, I don't think this saw tournament success sadly, because, you know, format being a thing. Articuno is really cool though. 110 HP dude with lightning weakness, but Zapdos that we'll see in the set doesn't hit weakness anyway, so this is not typically relevant. But as long as it's active, when the opponent plays a supporter from their hand, you prevent all effects of that card done to your benched water Pokemon. This means that Squirtle from earlier cannot get Guzmed, which is really important. And if the opponent can't Guzmed anything on your bench, they can't switch with the Guzmed, so they might actually get stuck in the active where they normally wouldn't. Cold Cyclone actually makes sense in the Stoice deck as well. For 2 water energy you do 70 and move 2 water from this Pokemon to one of your bench. So you move them to the Squirtle that can't get gusted because you've got Articuno in play, and then you get to keep that for the Candy Evolution next turn, and your Blastoise GX is off to the races. It's really good. Okay, we're like half an hour in, and we haven't talked about the best card in the format at the moment, so I guess we have to go and do that. As much as it pains me to say it, there is a Pikachu at the top tiers. I think this is a Zekrom card though, with just a little... What is Pikachu even giving to Zekrom, right? It's like, its powers pales in comparison. I don't know. I don't even know what it's doing as far as like the effect on this card, because nothing of this screams Pikachu anywhere. I guess Spark, but whatever. 240 HP basic with free energy retreat. This is where the fighting weakness actually matters, because this is where the 120 damage of like Onix from the previous set comes in, and there are a couple of Pokemon like Lucario GX as well, where it's like you hit 120 as a fighting type, that's good enough, and it's because of this card. Full Blitz for 3 lightning energy does 150, and then searches your deck for up to 3 lightning energy cards and attaches them to one of your Pokemon. I had made the mistake before of attaching anywhere that you like, because basically every other version of this effect we get in the future does that. So, whoops. But that was in the testing session, thankfully. We did not make that mistake in the real video. Tag Bolt for 3 lightning energy does 200 damage, and if you have at least 3 extra lightning energy on this card, it also does 170 to one of the opponent's bench Pokemon. Suddenly, that Tapu Lele that the opponent had to bench to set up with doesn't look so safe. This can take 4 prize turns, and it's not even close. Keep in mind this is a lightning Pokemon, so we just got Electro Power in, so these numbers can be buffed by up to 120 if necessary, although that is probably excessive and probably wasteful. Tag Bolt can scale to like 260 and take out other tag team Pokemon as well. This is incredibly powerful, the acceleration is absolutely insane, and yeah, best card of the format is probably not an understatement at this stage. It kind of just gets around almost everything you would have trouble with. There's an Electrode here, which I think is really cool. If you evolve into this thing, then you get to shift your lightning energies around in any way that you like. Pretty good, because there's a lot of times where you just have, like, especially for Zeraora, you want to have lightning energy on a bunch of stuff so you can retreat, but then you need to coalesce that energy. I don't think this saw play in Pikarom, but I mean, it certainly could have. I think maybe Mahomes Group played a 1-1 of it at some point. And it's like you can accelerate free energy to the bench one if the opponent doesn't KO the active, or like you like switch around and whatnot. You can just use the Electro Shaker to get all 6 energy on one Pikarom and Tag Bolt from there. Pretty cool. The second best card in the set is the Zapdos. This thing seems kind of unassuming until you realize just how powerful it is against the evolving basics and stuff like that. 110 HP, lightning weakness doesn't usually matter. I mean, it's specifically against Jolteon it can matter, but other than that, not really too bad. Thunderous Assault for 1 lightning does 10 damage, but if this was on the bench and became active this turn, 70 more damage. Its damage specifically is not affected by weakness, would be affected by resistance, but nothing resists lightning anymore, so blah. But yeah, it's 80 damage, which can be scaled up with electro powers, and of course Choice Band hits 110, so this can hit 140 on GXs without too much issue. That's 2-shotting on a single Prizer. Also note that it does take a lightning energy, not a colorless energy, so while you can't counter gain it, you can fund a mountain to make this cost 0 as well, which is really powerful. Just as a basic deck, you can play Zapdos with like Zera Aura on the bench, and the Zera Aura gives your Zapdos 0 treats, so you can just keep switching between them, and it's kind of gross. So yeah, very strong card. Lightning does get some more power cards. This is unfortunately not one of them. I would have loved this in Lost Thunder, to be honest. I would have played the heck out of it. Ampharos GX is a 240 HP stage 2, so yes, it gives up 2 prizes, but it's so much harder to get out. And unfortunately, its attack is just not worth it when you compare it to Pikarom, because Pikarom's are basic, so easy to do. For 1 lightning energy, power recharge does 30, and you put all electro power from your discard pile into your hand. So if you can get all 4 of them in rotation, this is essentially 150 for 1 or maybe even 0 energy with Thunder Mountain, which is pretty good. Again, would have played that last round. Impact Bolt for a 2nd lightning energy, discards all the lightning that's on it but does a base damage of 150, so you can scale that with the electro powers if you want as well. Electrical GX is not really worth it on a stage 2, 1 lightning energy, search your deck for up to 7 Pokemon, put them into the hand, doesn't even bench them, so it's like, yeah, you know, just not great. Like, if you could bench the basics as well, you could, it would still be bad, but you could at least argue it. Yeah, on a stage 2 that attack is awful. There's a 60 HP Blitzel if you ever want to use Elm stuff. It does have Delivery Dash, which is pretty good. Search your deck for up to 2 Electro Powers for 1 Lightning Energy, or 0 again with Thunder Mountain. Obviously Sledgehammer is a problem with these fighting weak Pokemon, so you do have to watch out for the Buzzwole. That is very well played. Yeah, it's a thing. The Zebstrika is neat. I don't think this ever saw play, but it could be a really good split line with the discard draw Zebstrika, which is a good consistency engine in itself. If you evolve from this thing this turn, it does 30 plus 90 for a lightning and a colorless. Technically can be made a 0 energy attack with counter game and Thunder Mountain, so pretty solid. Emolga is the next part of the Nuzzle deck. So this 60 HP Lightning Weak, 0 retreat by the way, so it's a really good starter as well. Lets you search for a Pokemon that has Nuzzle and put it into the hand. It does not exclude itself, and it is not once per hard once per turn, it's a soft once per turn. So you can Emolga, search Emolga, and then keep doing that until you've got basically your entire board set up. The only thing that's holding this back at this point is that the Raichu does not have Nuzzle. So we have to wait until Cosmic Eclipse before this actually comes into play. But it is one of my favorite decks of this this time period, so we will be seeing it. There is Galvantula, can put a card from the discard to hand, that's kind of whatever. Tapu Koko is the last of, well, I mean, yeah, because Zera Aura is not particularly good here. Tapu Koko Prism is the last of our lightning support things here, and oh boy, what a support it is. So it has a retreat cost this time, unfortunate, but 130 HP sometimes matters. It's got an attack that can matter against the stall decks, with Hooper and stuff like that. 2 Lightning and the Colors for 120 actually does come up. That does one-shot Hooper specifically, so there you go. And if this is on the bench, you can choose 2 of your bench Pokemon, attach a Lightning from the discard to each of them, and then discard everything from this Pokemon and put it in the Lost Zone. So this is 2 energy to accelerate to your board for free, and this is how you help to facilitate turn 1 full blitz alongside energy switches and the like. Super ridiculous card. It's also pretty good in other decks that don't have like a specific energy requirement. If they just use colorless, then you can splash lightning energy, because Volkner can search lightning energy as well, so pretty useful. And go from there. It's not bad. Gengar and Mimikyu, I did mention most of this card before with a Horror House explanation, but the main attack is Poltergeist, which is meant to synergize with Horror House. 2 Psychic Energy, 50 damage for each item, or trainer card even, in the opponent's hand. So it does count stadiums, etc. as well. If you can item lock the opponent, which we will get to in the fighting section, this card is gross. Not much else to say about it. It is kind of gross. However, it is very frail. It is one shot by Zoroark GX, which did win EUIC in the next format. So, like, Zoroark was still popular until it rotated. And getting one shot by that in the Psychic deck, probably not the best. But most Malamar decks did play a copy of this. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Nidoran female is noteworthy for the future because, again, the Nidoqueen is pretty good, and this is a 60 HP Pokemon, which is very good for the Meganium decks because they have a lot of 60 HP stuff for Elm, and it lets you search your deck for a basic and bench it for 1 energy, so that actually does come up as well. The Nidoking, not very good, as most of them aren't, but if you do somehow get King and Queen on board at the same time, which, to be fair, King can be searched by Queen, so maybe, 200 damage for free energy. But it's not triple acceleration compatible, so it sucks. That's pretty much it. There's a Psychic type retrain of the Fire type Alolan Marowak that we had before. Still has the same issue though of being Alolan Pokemon only, which we just don't have a ton of good ones for because they decided, let's make Alolan Pokemon evolve from non-Alolan Pokemon. So the basics don't count. So it's really dumb. Starmie was almost cool. I think this could see a lot of play in a limited format for this sort of thing, like if you played Sealed here, or just like exclusively this set or something. It searches your deck for free in any combination of Water and Psychic Energy and attaches them to one of your bench Pokemon. And does 40 damage too, for any 1 energy. So yeah, this would be fantastic acceleration, kind of like what Pikarom does, but it's for 1 energy. It's on a stage 1, however, so unfortunately not too good. Also a very frail stage 1 as well. Mr. Mime has the Scoop Up Lock power, which prevents the opponent from picking up their Pokemon, basically. Any Pokemon that has damage counters on them, on their side of the field, cannot be returned to their hand. Apologies for the beep there, by the way, that was my controller deciding it wanted to die. Anyway, yeah, this prevents Acerola. That's pretty much all it does, but Acerola is incredibly annoying, so it still sees tech play. This card does get played until rotation happens. There is the Magic Odds Mr. Mime as well, which is the counterpart to the Magic Evens one from Lost Thunder. This card is really, really bad though, because 270 is a breakpoint for it, and 270 is actually reachable. So I don't know what they were thinking with that, really. They needed to scale it to at least 300 damage, surely. They know what numbers that they're getting to here, so not really sure what they were doing with it. Oh well. The Jinx is not great. There's a Cosmog if you want to play Solgaleo GX still for some reason. This one has Bench Barrier on itself, basically, so it's like Shell Shield, I think it was. It's that Squirtle for the Blastoise deck. Yeah, stop spread damage on, it's kind of alright. There is a combo hit here, which we don't get the finishing part to until the next set. Hitmonchan does 30 damage for 1 fighting energy and can switch to the bench. Hitmonlee requires your Hitmonchan specifically to have used that hit and run attack last turn, but for 1 energy it does 90 to one of the opponent's bench Pokemon. If this Hitmonlee does an attack, there's a Hitmontop we'll talk about next time that for 1 energy does 60 to each of the opponent's Pokemon. Very cool deck. Stopped a little bit by new next set, unfortunately, but still very cool. Fighting type stuff still has a little bit more to give here, though. There's an Omastar, which does see a tiny bit of play here and there. This card is effectively a more difficult version of the Houndoom from Generation 3 to play here. Stage 2 Fossil, so that should ring some alarm bells immediately. But if you have fewer Pokemon in play than the opponent, they can't play items. This really is nasty, actually, because this can get played with Gengar Mimikyu, and you only ever need 1 of these in play, right? So it's like you get 1, maybe at most 2 Gengar for when your other one goes down, and if the opponent plays more than 2 bench Pokemon down, they can't play items, and most decks will always play that many down. It's really annoying. And then we have the Kabutops over here, which if it's active, the opponent can't play supporter cards. Unfortunately, its attack is really, really bad, and it does have a 2 retreat, so it's not really possible to escape board with this and like have it retreat for free. So yeah, thankfully, not a particularly great deck together, but it is how it be. Pupitar over here, if your opponent has exactly 1 prize card left, DCE 120 damage. There's not really a good Tyranitar to evolve into, unfortunately, but this thing does one-shot Pikarom, and the Larvitar is already a tech play for that, so like strictly speaking it could work. It's too expensive though in terms of like deck space and time spent, so yeah. Then there's a Lycanroc, which we will actually see in the games as well for this round. Its Twilight Eyes, when you evolve into it, lets you discard an energy from the opponent's active Pokemon. Which, yeah, this actually saw a revival for the Lycanroc, like Zoroark Lycanroc archetype as a whole. And it's pretty strong. 120 damage for the fighting double colorless even is the same as the Lycanroc GX, the midday form, and then I guess its ability is like similar to the midnight form, so that's kind of cool. Being the dusk one, it does have traits of both. Splinter Charge GX is also kind of neat, like for 1 fighting energy. 30 damage for each energy in the opponent's discard pile. If they're playing a heavy discard thing like a lot of fire decks tend to be, then you can probably do a finishing shot with that at some point too. So, somewhat neat. As much as I adore this kind of attack, I am not playing this Alolan Grimer. For a double colorless energy, it does 20 plus 50 for each special condition the opponent's active has on them. We have a Salazzle that can burn and burn and poison the opponent when you evolve into it. So this can, strictly speaking, be doing 150 damage. That's not amazing. There's a Nihilego that does confusion and poison, but on both active Pokemon, which makes it sort of annoying to play. And of course it's got a really heavy retreat, and it needs double colorless. And yeah, there's too many issues obviously as we go through, so not great. The Alola Muck on the other hand did see some play here and there. When you evolve into this thing, you can look at the top 6 cards of the opponent's deck, discard any number of items that you find there. The opponent shuffles the rest into the deck. Key point though, they don't get to look at the cards that get shuffled back. So that's kind of cool, I suppose. If they haven't done a deck search somehow in the first turn of the game, then, you know, they might not know the cards that are there. That's neat. I did mention the Tyranitar stuff before. This is just so expensive, though. Dark Double Colors to do 30 to each of the opponent's Pokemon. Tapu Koko does 20 for that. It's a basic with a Double Colors energy. Just why? I don't know. Bite Off is a lot of damage, but also far too expensive to try and use, in my humble opinion. 4 energy, never happening. Not when Dark doesn't have acceleration. Absol is devastatingly powerful, actually. This isn't really a good attacker, you basically don't see it for that, but Dark Ambition is crazy good. If the opponent's active is a basic, its retreat cost is 1 more. This nullifies the skateboard basically, which is critical to the Jirachi that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Insane tech card for that. Also pretty good into a lot of other decks that are like light retreats on the basic stuff. Of course, if they make their retreat cost 0 by like Zeraora or that Squirtle from above, this doesn't factor into that. They still retreat for free, but it disrupts everything else, which is pretty great. There's a Spiritomb that if you really want Pokemon in the discard pile, you could use to discard 4 of them from the deck. Kinda cool, but doesn't really have application. I think it's supposed to work with a Zoroark over here, which for a Dark and Double Colorless does 20 for each Pokemon in your discard pile. Caps at 200 though, so that's fine, like 200 is a good number, but yeah, it does actually have a cap to it, unlike the Vespiquen and stuff. But it scales better than that did, so cool, I guess. This Yveltal does actually see some play later on. It is most notable in Eternatus, but it did see play before that, I think, as well. Derail is fine, discard special energy for the opponent's active and do 30 damage, pretty solid. Clutch is also okay, but we're moving into a more switch-focused format right now, so the no retreat thing probably doesn't matter. We also have Guzma, so yeah. But the key traits is 110 HP is a bit low for any Veltal, but it doesn't have a retreat cost. That's actually really good for Dart decks moving forward. Hooper GX is a bit of a meme, but this did see some play in Dart Box because it's just generally kind of okay. 190 HP, free energy retreat is heavy, but we do get Dark City in a couple of sets time that can make it retreat for free. And it has Nasty Plot. Search your deck for up to 2 cards for 1 Darkness Energy, put them into the hand. Pretty okay. Dark Strike is a very standard free Dark Energy, 160, can't use this attack next turn sort of thing. It's a very common restriction that we see at this point. Devilish Hands is also sort of neat though. You get to choose GX and EX Pokemon on your opponent's board. You choose up to 6 times. You can choose the same one, so it's kind of weird. You do 30 damage per choice to the Pokemon that you choose. So, for example, if the opponent has 2 GXs in play, you could do 90 to each of them, or you could do 150 to one and 30 to the other. Depends what sort of numbers you need. So that's kind of cool. It's modal, which is nice. GX attacks are not always that prevalent in some of the Dart decks as we go forward. You don't always need them, but yeah, I don't know. This is not the best one that they have access to, in my humble opinion. You will just sometimes see this card used though, because going second Rogue Ring is actually kind of good. So yeah. Finally, for the Dart Pokemon, Incineroar GX is over here. Kind of interesting to see Incineroar is the only one that actually gets its alternate type ever noted. I'm pretty sure there has never been a Psychic type for Decidueye. That much I know. Pretty sure there's never been a Fairy type Primarina either. That's kind of weird. Anyway, this is sort of similar to Charizard EX in terms of acceleration stuff for what we have. I guess it's more similar to the Charizard we've just seen here, right? Once during your turn, before you attack, put 3 damage counters on this guy, and if you do, search your deck for up to 3 Darkness Energy, attach them to this Pokemon. Its attacks will take Colorless Energy, which is a bit weird considering the Dark Energy like attach thing from itself, but whatever. 130 damage for triple colorless. Discard a special energy if any opponent's active. Kind of alright, but special energy is not that big at the moment, so eh. And then Darkest Tornado, for every damage counter that's on this Pokemon, you do 10 plus 50. So by base, it's going to do 160, which is not that impressive actually for a thing that way. But you can just put damage counters on this dude whenever you want, right? You put 3 damage counters down, you don't have to get an energy on it, so you can just get that scaled up a second time. It's alright. I think this actually saw a little bit of play in a Greninja and Zora deck in the next set, so if we're ever going to see it, that's probably why. Alright, we're over 50 minutes in and we're finally talking about the third best card of this set. It's just the way these things go in terms of the numbers, right? Jirachi is busted. There is not really any other way of putting it. This card is a spiritual successor to the one all the way back in, I forget exactly what set it was it like Legend Maker? No, Legend Maker was after this. It was one of the Generation 3 sets where it was a 60 HP dude, looked at the top 5 cards of your deck, put any card from that into the hand, and put itself to sleep. This one doesn't get any card, it only gets trainers. However, the synergy that we have with it now is much higher because we have a skateboard, which lets you retreat even if you are asleep or paralyzed, and it cuts the retreat cost of this guy down to 0. So this will let you search for the supported stuff, it lets you search for items, it gets stadiums, etc. out as well. So incredibly powerful card to have access to, and this is the consistency backbone of a ton of decks. Obviously, one of the drawbacks is that it is weak to Zapdos, because it will get one-shot by that thing, but it's the price you've got to pay to get set up sometimes. There is a Bronzor over here with Evolutionary Advantage. If you are going second, you can just straight evolve into the Air Balloon Bronzong over here. I mean, I guess it's not got Levitate, so maybe it needs it for the ground immunity, I suppose. Prevent all damage done to it by fire Pokemon. Not useful this set, of course. Can be good next set. Hilariously, Auto won a Players' Cup round that was streamed because the opponent was playing a Center Scorch deck, which was only Center Scorch, basically. Only Fire-type stuff there. And the opponent managed to get this out on their first turn, and they conceded immediately because they had nothing to beat it. So they lost the game on the spot, which I thought was hilarious. So yeah. There's a Ferrothorn that's like almost good here. Like, it's too difficult to play this with Magnezone, be the stage 1, but it's like 80 for triple colorless and do up to 100 damage to a bench Pokemon. 20 per metal energy that's on this thing. So if you put 5 metal down, that's like 80 and 100 snipe. Almost a GX attack minimum. It's almost like Tag Bolt if you squint really, really hard, right? But even if you just put 3 metal, 80 snipe 60 is pretty strong. It's just like, it's a stage 1 alongside the stage 2, which is really, really bad. I kind of like the Bisharp, but it's not very good. It's almost like the opposite of Beedrill. 120 damage for 1 metal energy if it has no damage counters on it. Synergizes with Max Potion, I suppose, or like Acerola, but it's 110 HP. This guy's dying like every single time. There's a Cobalion over here, which gets used in Mewtwo and Mew decks later on, because its attack is for its GX attacks are for colorless. It does let you prevent special conditions on your metal energy laden Pokemon, so that's kind of neat. Dueling Saber for 2 metal energy does 110 damage if there's a stadium in play, 50 plus 60, so that's kind of neat. Iron Roll GX is what it's actually played for though. During your opponent's next turn, none of their Pokemon can attack, including stuff they play on that turn. So this just gives you a free turn, basically every time. Which, honestly, pretty alright for a GX attack. This gets played because of Welder, so that you can end up attaching effectively another free energy is what the idea is. There's a Metal-type Honedge over here, which is useful for the Jasmine stuff because the Doublade is actually worth talking about. This card is 90 HP dude, so very frail, but it takes a DCE to Tool Drop. If you remember Gen 5, there was the Trubbish that was hilariously powerful with this, where it did like 20 for a Psychic and the Colossus per tool that was in play. This one does 30 and takes a DCE, which is really cool. Not, unfortunately, the best card out there. Tools are not at their prime in this generation, but we do have a Genesect, which was last set, where you can, a Genesect GX that you can put 2 tools on. So you can scale this on your own up to like 210, 240 maybe? If you play enough of the Genesect, probably 210 because you don't want to put GXs down in a non-GX deck. But that's still pretty good. If the opponent plays any tools, then they get absolutely dumpstered by this as well. We have Adventure Bag in the previous set, so you can search tools more easily. Escape Board obviously is going to get played because you probably play this as a Jirachi deck. Right, so you've got a lot of tools that you can do. Choice Band is still in format. It's kind of neat. If you go the extra mile and play like a Celebi or the Memory Energy, you could evolve into the Aegislash here as well. Its attack is not very good, but if you copy Tool Drop, that's fine. Royal Guard is what you want it for. A 140 HP upgrade that takes 40 less damage from attacks. So essentially turns into a 180 HP guy. If this survives a hit and gets to Tool Drop twice, that's going to be very, very strong for it. So, it's not bad. Fairy types only get 2 cards, but both of them are somewhat noteworthy. Alolan Ninetales is a Fairy type retrain of the Great Encounters, or was it Burning? It was Burning Shadows one that has the Safeguard style effect. So all effects of attacks, including damage done by GX and EX, just get ignored. Aurora Beam only doing 80 doesn't matter that much. It's just doing damage, right? Annoyingly, this guy doesn't resist Dark, so kind of gets beat up on by some of the Dark stuff that you would expect to survive. It's kind of weird. Then Mimikyu is a retrain of the Psychic type one that we had back in, I want to say, Guardians Rising, where it's got Filch and Copycat. You will see me play this card because I play it with Gardevoir and Sylveon in the next set. So, yeah, very cool card. Latios and Latias is our second last of the tag teams here, and unfortunately it is just wholly outclassed by a regular GX. That's why it's taken so long to get to. 250 HP, 1 retreat, so on the nicer side when it comes to that sort of bit. Buster Purge, 1 water, 2 psychic and a colorless, does 240, which is really good numbers. Discard free energy from this Pokemon. 240 is particularly noteworthy because with a Choice Band that takes out basically every tag team except Magikarp and Wailord that we see at this point in time. So it's a one-shot machine, which is really good. Aero Unit is very similar to Full Voltage and Nitro Tank and stuff like that. For 1 Psychic Energy, you attach 5 Basic Energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way that you like. If you have 1 extra energy on this guy, it also is an agility effect, where it prevents all effects of attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon, during the opponent's next turn. Pretty good. Unfortunately, this card is outclassed by Ultra Necrozma, who takes the off energy as well. Instead of water, it takes the metal energy, and is a 2-prizer. Yes, it's got 60 less HP, but it gives up fewer prizes, so you don't lose half the game in one go. And also scales to the same amount of damage. It does 20 plus 80 for each psychic energy that you discard, and if you put 3 psychic energy on it plus the 1 metal to pay for its attack, it actually does more damage than this card at 260. So there is like no point whatsoever in playing this, and it really pains me to say it because these two are very cool, and this card is actually not bad when you just read it. But it's outclassed by a 2-prizer, so who cares? There's a couple of good Alolan Executor here. This is the one that's good in Standard. It is a Dragon-type retrain of the one that Sai just played in the last battle video. It's 120 cap damage if you have enough different types of basic energy in the discard. And it's cool because it's searchable and also not weak to fire. Like, being weak to Fairy is a better weakness than Fire, so even though you can't hit for weakness against like water types, honestly, Grass weakness not really very good to hit in the first place right now, because most of the water deck stuff doesn't care. Like there isn't a good one, so who cares about hitting Grass weakness, right? Yeah, so it's super good, right? You still get the damage output from it, you get higher searchability at this point. What's not to like? Also, you could technically play Lance Prism style with this one, and I think that would also be pretty funny. So, yeah. The other Executor probably makes better use of Lance Prism, but it does so in Expanded, because we need the Propagation Execute for this to work. 160 HP still, 4 Energy Retreat this time, so you could buff padding this one if you really wanted to. That's very funny. Paradise Draw doesn't really matter, but if you have to set up still, I guess that's kind of cute. Egg Splat is what we're here for. For Grassland Colorless, or Double Dragon Energy in Expanded, 60 damage per execute that you discard. If you want to have a fun deck for this time, Execute has got Propagation, so if it's in the discard, it can get added back to the hand. So, with Ditto Prism and Lance Prism Star, you can actually have all 4 Execute in rotation, and this is a 160 HP single prizer doing 240 damage a turn, which is very funny. There's a interesting enough Dratini line here. I mean, prevent all effects of attacks to this 70 HP one's kind of neat, I suppose. Unfortunately, the Dragonite is not like particularly good, just because we don't really have the good GX at the moment. Once during your turn, search your deck for a supporter card. Honestly, it's pretty solid. It's on the stage 2. Its attack is not very good. We do see this ability eventually get played on the stage 2 with Gallade in Standard, or like it was a few formats ago anyway. But the Gallade in particular had a really good Curlier to evolve from. This Dragonair isn't doing anything, so yeah, not super great. Finally, we have Colorless, and there are quite a few noteworthy Colorless Pokemon here, so I'll try and keep this brief because I know we're over an hour already. And we're finally getting to the cute one. Eevee and Snorlax is really neat. It's not the most powerful one out there, but it is generically applicable, and that matters quite a bit too. This also marks the transition away from the Lost Thunder evolution format, because I think this is honestly the biggest culprit for it. 270 HP is weak to fighting, but it's a bit bigger than the Zekrom, so it's a bit harder. You've got to put the Choice Band on as well before you get the KOs here, so that's kind of neat. Cheer Up for 1 Colorless Energy does nothing, but it does attach an energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. Notably not basic energy, so I guess you could do like a double Colorless, that's kind of neat. For 4 Colorless Energy, you get the hilariously named Dump Truck Press. Love this attack name. To 120 damage, doubled if the opponent is an evolution Pokemon. So it does really badly into enemy tag teams, which becomes a problem later, but it absolutely destroys any evolution deck, especially the GX evolutions. This is a very odd attack to print, to be honest with you, because this effectively eliminates almost every single evolution GX that was played before. because 240 is enough to KO almost all of them, right? Only the bulkiest of stage 2 GXs don't die in one hit to this, and they can just get choice banded. So yeah, very weird attack to print in that sort of way. It does become a bit more considerable in VMAX formats, but that's next generation. Megaton Press for the same 4 energy cost does 210 damage, so this is what you need to use against a single, basic GXs to get the KO. But if you have at least 1 extra energy on this guy, you also draw until you have 10 cards in the hand. So this gets played in Rashizard and stuff later, partly so that they're not entirely weak to water, but also because you do actually sometimes get use out of that to draw like 9 cards in the hand as well. It's pretty good. Now, I am unfortunately going to have to talk about Pidgeotto here. This card is just not fun. Let's just put it that way. It's a 60 HP stage 1, so it is Elm searchable. I believe that does matter sometimes as well. This was part of the Blastoise theme deck, which is what added to its consistency, so it was good there. Airmail lets you look at the top 2 cards you deck, put 1 into hand, put the other to the bottom of the deck. So I suppose this could also work with Ingo and Emmet if you want to. And that's pretty much all it does. However, like, this is one of the main features in control decks going forward. The so-called bird control is starting now. We don't have all the tools for it yet, but oh, believe me, we will. And I'm pretty sure no one is going to play the most toxic version of it, which is like literally controlling what the opponent draws every single turn until you can deck them out. But this card will see play, because in Unified Minds there is a BHM deck I actually want to play that uses this, and doesn't use it for pure evil, just mostly evil. Yeah, this card is super annoying. Obviously, if you can take a ton of them out, then, you know, with like spread attacks and stuff, they are quite weak to that. But we have Bench Barrier coming back next set, so that isn't even a surefire thing. Very, very irritating. There was always a debate as to whether you play the 60 HP or the 50 HP Pidgey. The 50 HP one can draw a card, but of course it doesn't have 60 HP, so it was a little bit more vulnerable to stuff at times. It just depended on the player at that point. But yeah, control was everywhere, and it has been, like, stall has been a thing for quite a while, but full-on control actually comes in, and it's largely because of this card. Really annoying. Then we have a Persian, which actually does see some play. More play next set, but it did see some play this set as well. Make him pay for 1 colorless does only 20 damage, but if the opponent's got 4 more cards in your hand, they show you their hand, and you get to discard cards from it until they have exactly 4 left. This is amazing against decks that are stockpiling, but also just potentially capable of bricking the opponent too. This card is very, very mean. So yeah, honestly, pretty strong. Zoroark control was technically a thing. It wasn't quite control in the same thing of like the opponent doesn't get to play the game, but it did sort of limit them an awful lot, and this is a good way of doing that. Finally, as far as the cards go here, we do have to talk about the Aerodactyl, because this does matter in future formats. It's a little bit expensive and a little bit hard to use at the moment, but it will come into play, trust me. 130 HP, and does 180 damage for free energy. That's basically the gist of it. Colorless is fine for it as well that way, but it doesn't really matter. I guess it'd be better as a fighting type, but who cares. Yeah, it evolves from Unidentified Fossil specifically, which is somewhat relevant in the future. There's a Stadium card that lets you cheat this into play in Unified Minds, so that matters there. And yeah, if you don't have any benched GX or EX Pokemon, 90 plus 90 for free energy. It being an evolution as well matters for triple acceleration energy. So yeah, all parts of this actually matter later on. And it's really good. 180 damage on a 1 prizer is very, very strong. Even if you're not one-shotting tag teams, like 2-shotting them with single prizes is a favorable trade for you, right? Because you outpace them, and you will win before they even KO like half of their prizes stuff, so it's really good. So, This set, of course, has a ton of cards, as we've seen a ton of very good things here. As I've said before, it's only going to get harder and harder to do these as we go, because the sets just keep on getting bigger. But yeah, it's just a lot of impactful stuff here, and I think that makes it at least relatively fun. We'll get a full glimpse as to how the tag team stuff starts, because I did play Pikarom during the stuff here, but most of the other tag teams in the set aren't really super great. Like, Gengar Mimikyu is fine, don't get me wrong, but it's not like a meta warper or anything. Its damage is super inconsistent, so there is that. Celebi Venusaur did see a little bit of success in exactly this format, but gets eclipsed because of its weakness in the next format. And yeah, Latios wasn't very good. We spoke about the Magikarp and Wailord last time, so yeah. Quagnag played like one of it maybe. It was fine. And then Eevee Snorlax is okay, but better later. So, yeah, tag teams didn't start off the absolute best, but then most of the time, that is how you want effects like this to happen. Because otherwise, we get like Greninja, Radiant Greninja, and it's just like, why would I ever play anything else? Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you have found this interesting, and until next time, catch you all later.